Welcome, everyone, to episode 67 of the RDH Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Chad. Joined alongside me is my brother, Tanner. How's it hanging, dude?
It's going well. It is going well. As I said, I don't know, maybe like a month or two ago, it's starting to get cold out. It's actually starting to get cold out now, when you can actually, feel it. But I wanna throw it over to you real quick because we don't usually talk about hockey this early in the season. But your boy, Mr. Celebrini, is on the ice, and your Sharks could maybe win a game.
Hey, since the last
More than
time we
one.
talked, they've won like 3 games at this point. So, hey, there was a couple pods. We went 2 weeks in a row. I thought we were going to go three where they didn't get a win. But no, they've gotten three back so far, and yeah, they play tonight. We'll see what's happening. I'm repping the Australia roller hockey jersey, and behind me you got the Team USA roller hockey jersey. You know, we played Australia. God, I think we actually won that time. So talking about some winning hockey, Sharks are there. You know what I mean? Sharks got a great farm system along with Chicago, but it's going to take a little bit of time to get there. It's not like they're a playoff team this year. I'm not expecting it. I'm not even expecting it next year, and then maybe the year following because you got to develop Will Smith and Macklin Celebrini. And yeah, as the season goes on and football goes away, we definitely add in hockey there because hey, played hockey for 20 years, not at a very high level. But today we are talking about football, and more football. For those of you that are not on YouTube and can't see us, a couple couch warriors here. We're talking Dallas Cowboys, like always, NFL news, matchups for the bettors out there, some college football. That's probably where we will end it, unless Tanner starts, with some bullshit again, like he does at the end of podcasts. He likes to do that. We're
Dick in.
starting off with the Dallas Cowboys. Dak Prescott injured. What do you got? What do you got to say for that, Tanner? What do you got to say? If you want to win, Cooper Rush, put him in. Just put him in.
I guess. I thought he played all right when he did come in, after Dak goes down with that injury. If Dak stays in, do they win that game? Maybe. Maybe. The defense was starting to play a little bit better towards the end, but again, it's still, almost a 30-point endeavor against the Cowboys. And that's just not really like winning football. There wasn't really much to this game other than Cowboys still can't stop the run. They did a little bit better in pass coverage, but not really that well. You know what I mean? You saw a lot of plays where it was just busted coverage and just guys were getting beat like pretty much like drums. It just looked like missed assignments and things of that nature. And then you had, you know, Zimmer coming out later a couple days later, and he was like, I think a reporter asked him, you know, players are saying like, getting used to this new scheme since they've been in Dan Quinn's system for a while, and I thought Zimmer's response was just golden. And they highlighted the play against Diggs. I think it was the Darnell Mooney touchdown. And it was like he just said he's like, well, it's man to man coverage. No, that was it. That was his whole answer. And I was like, okay, I guess fair enough. But Diggs is not, renowned for being a shutdown kind of man to man corner guy. So maybe that tracks. But no, it was really just bad all around. I don't think the run game really got going. I thought Rico had an all right game, like a fluke touchdown that he caught from Dak after Dak was just like scrambling in the pocket, like what the heck is going on? And that was like really the only play I do remember from that game because a lot of it was just really forgettable. Cowboys had a couple good drives. Obviously, Brandon Aubrey played well, but defense is getting slowly better. Maybe I'm not sure. In spurts, it looks like they're doing well, but in other moments, it's like, oh, here they are again. They just reared their ugly head. So I don't think a whole lot is improving on the defensive side of the ball. And when you don't got Micah Parsons in there, we don't got DeMarcus Lawrence in there. Deron Bland was still out for that game. It's obviously gonna take a lot out on that defense. I think maybe when Micah comes back against Philly this next week, and maybe if Deron Bland, I think he'll play. Maybe it'll get a lot better, but I think along with the injuries and just the new foreign scheme, it's just the players don't really. There's not a whole lot to buy into. You know what I mean? Especially for that culture as a whole, because it looks like a lot of things are on the way out. But that's more off-season talk at that point. But it just doesn't look like they're playing that hard. You know what I mean? Especially on the defensive side of the ball. Offensive side, you could say a little different, but again, with the injuries to CD and Dak, it's not looking pretty in the near future. I'll say that.
And it's one of those things. Unfortunately, it's if you bring the pod back, 8, 9 episodes ago, 10 episodes ago, when it was in the off season, we pretty much called this one. We said that there was, a minimal of 2 off-season acquisitions, and you're relying on so many rookies on so many positions. And the rookies had a pretty solid game week 1, and then since then, Tyler Guyton, the rookie out of our left tackle out of Oklahoma, is getting just beat very badly a lot. Cooper Beebe, stepping in and playing a new position, center in the NFL, is, I can't imagine how hard that is. But the fact that he's doing as well as he is, he's been the bright spot on that offensive line, aside from Zach Martin, obviously, folks.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that goes without saying. We actually know what we're talking about sometimes. And when it comes to the offensive line with the Cowboys, you see them just getting absolutely demolished. And Dak's not used to that, because his entire career, he's had a pretty solid offensive line. At the beginning of his career, he had the best offensive line in the league. And, since then it's kind of dwindled, but they've replaced it very quickly. And with the guys that they've drafted, they've been plug-and-play starters. Now, this may be the first time that you're not seeing that. But once again, if you rely on rookies, on so many different positions starting, that's not necessarily going to be the best recipe there. Because, yes, some rookies are absolutely good to come in and play, and some rookies in 2-3 years come out of nowhere. And you're like, wait, where was this kid drafted? Wait, I remember this guy. So for the Cowboys, it's not looking good. And I said it a couple weeks ago, third place in the NFC. They're still playing like the third place in the NFC. And the Eagles are playing even better. Saquon Barkley does a new move. That's good luck, Madden. Have fun trying to do that one. But Dallas right now is the third best team in that division. Washington's not slowing down anytime soon. And now that Dak's being out multiple weeks with the hamstring, you never know with the hamstring. Unfortunately, Cowboy fans, we've been there a while. Tanner and I have, and I remember the Miles Austin days. I remember those days where every year it seemed like he would pull a hamstring and it'd be day to day, and that meant, well, there goes the season. You know what I mean? And then randomly he shows up in the playoffs with a pulled hamstring. Like, what, Miles? But Dallas trades 4th round pick for wide receiver Jonathan Mingo. Last year, I had a scouting profile on him. I talked about him in the episode. He was a day 2 guy for me. The justification for me, first of all, I got to say this: Amari Cooper went for a 5th. Deontay Johnson went for a 5th. DeAndre Hopkins went for a 5th and can become a 4th. So that stings a little bit there. Now, justification wise, here you go. Here's the couch scout in me. He's on his rookie contract.
Mm-hmm.
He got drafted last year. So Dallas is not in the position to necessarily pay people. Now, they're not the worst. They're in bottom 15 in terms of cap room. They have like $29 million. But that's going to all get paid with Micah. And let's not even talk about Deron Bland in a couple seasons. You pay a 4th round pick for a wide receiver that I had on day 2. So, realistically, it's pretty similar to where he would have gone in the end of day 2 on round 4. So to me, it's not that big of a stretch. But when you see all of these other guys that are immediate impact players like DeAndre Hopkins, I mean, go look at his game. He got a couple tugs and he won the game for Kansas City. I mean, what do you mean? And not to mention Mike Williams goes. Like, there's so many better players that got picked, but Dallas isn't in the position to pay anybody for whatever. Don't know how you're going to get anybody, so that's where they get him. So you're hoping for lightning in a bottle here, and you said it. Dak's hurt, out multiple weeks. CD needs, if he's not 100%, I don't want to risk him. Mm-hmm. So we'll see how he goes. So he's going to be week to week, and not to mention all of the other injuries that we had. And unfortunately, it's an injury-riddled season, and you have a couple key pieces, and next year is going to be a whole lot different. In the offseason, I hope we have a whole lot to talk about, because if they go in with the same song and dance next year, it's going to be the same result. Because, and I'll stop my rant here and let you actually speak, because I need to take a breath here in a second. But how is it going to change? Because you have to pay Micah Parsons. So how does it change? Are you going to, all that money, if not more, is going to be going to Micah? I understand that DeMarcus Lawrence is probably not going to be here. I understand that Zach Martin's at the end of a contract, but you have to bring Zach back, because him and Cooper are the only bright spots on the offensive line. Obviously, Tyler Smith ain't playing too bad either. But there's just so much to go in with this Dallas Cowboy team, and it's one of those things where it's the same song and it's the same dance. But what do you got if I left any meat on the bone there?
I mean, there's not a whole lot, you know what I mean? In terms of what you said, like, I mean, Cowboys historically, like we know, they built through the draft. That's just kind of how they operate, and they're not really going to go out and sign the biggest free agent, Derrick Henry, you know, but they're just going to rely on their guns, and they're going to use guys from the inside that they know and love. You know, Zim Master, that's a key, you know, example of that, and it's just
How's that working out?
it's not working out very well in either situation. Derrick Henry is the best running back in the league right now, and Zimmer's got the worst defense. So, pretty polar opposites, at least of what was expected out of those free agency moves. So, I am, you know, obviously the season isn't completely over, but I mean, they have what, 3 wins, 5 losses. The division is lost at this point, and they're hoping for a wild card slot in an NFC conference that we didn't expect to be as stacked as it is, right? So it there have to get to like you just looked at. If you are looking on YouTube, probably 10 wins. You know, I don't think nine's going to cut it, especially again in this conference. But you got to win. You know, seven, 7 more games, and they have like the Eagles coming up this week. You know, it's not looking pretty, and they play a lot of tough teams. They still got to play Washington twice, Philly twice, and those are 4 losses probably. You know, so I don't know. It's not looking good. I think it's looking like a tank season, but Cowboys will always end up 8-8, 8-9 in this new 17-game format. But there's not a lot of hope moving forward. Hopefully, Micah Parsons can come back and they can get a spark, but there's not really a whole lot on offense that you're really like loving. The defense is horrible, you know, so it looks like a dumpster fire, and the fire just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I don't know, at a certain point, you got to start, you know, just letting the fire grow. Just let it. You're not going to contain it, right? You just got to say, all right, you know, maybe chalk it up this season. You know, injuries, whatever. They didn't do what they had to do in the offseason. I'm not saying you quit, you start tanking or anything like that. Still go out in there and win games, but
Tank it up.
Tank it up. Get a nice draft pick.
Tank it up.
Go get
three. Come on, give me like one more win on the season. Let's go 4 wins, and let's go see what we can do. Because if I'm not mistaken,
let's go get
I think the 4. Yeah. Like the Boise State
4
running
wins
back.
will get you there. That's all I'm saying.
Hey, it's one of those things where, you know, where is he going to be valued, you know, and we're gonna get into that. It's November already.
I know.
You know what I mean? December is when last year when we kind of, you know, started teasing the prospect profiles, but don't you worry.
Yeah.
I've already started working it up. And I've already got some just waiting for everybody. So
now that Dallas sucks,
we
started early.
Yeah, when we talk about college football this year, it's going to be bigger and better. Like we always do. Check out always got to plug the website rdhsports.net. That's where we release all of this draft information where we're going to be going out, and you can see it on YouTube as well on the ground there. But anyway,
I think it's right
going over there. Yeah, Tanner's pointing. Yeah, see everyone on Spotify right now. Sean, sorry man, if you're not, this is a tough scene. NFL news here. Okay, we're jumping NFL news because the Cowboys, you know, if keep doing that bad, you don't deserve that much airtime. You know who does deserve a lot of airtime is Washington. Okay, Marshawn Lattimore for a third. Marshawn Lattimore. He's been a top 10 cornerback since he's come in the league out of Ohio State. Like this guy's absolutely unbelievable. And I've watched many games of his. And great pick for a good team. And Dan Quinn had so many offseason acquisitions, unlike the Cowboys, and took about half the Cowboys defense, looks like the good half, and adding just more and more players to this defense. When, you know, you really thought coming into this year that they were going to struggle a little bit on defense, especially with the defensive line leaving that they had. But they add this cornerback. So, I mean, that's a huge move. And a third-round pick, now you have to pay him, so you have to have the cap space to do it. But, I mean, home run, right? Marshawn Lattimore, third? Come on.
I think absolutely a home run. You're getting I don't know how many Pro Bowls he made. I think it's like 3 or something like that. But he's a shutdown corner at his peak, you know, and if he can produce that level of play in Washington, or even 80% of that, that's going to be an immediate upgrade to whatever the heck they had in their secondary before. Because I think that's where Washington really struggled, was in their secondary. They've always been very good on the defensive line, and now that Dan Quinn's there, they've been even better with the rotational guys, like we saw it in Dallas. So it's, I think if they lock up that secondary, that's going to be a defense that's going to be nasty, and it's going to be very, very good come playoff time, because he's going to get a lot of reps in between now and then, and the Commanders are making the playoffs, so if you can stick a guy like Lattimore on their number one receiver, whoever you're playing, that's just immediately, it's just going to help you so much, obviously, in the, down in the trenches and on the other side of the field, depending on who you're playing, right? So it's, if you have the ability to shut down their number one receiver, or at least get anywhere close to it, and Lattimore has that ability, right? At least, like I said, at his peak. I think that's like you said, it's a home run move, and Commanders got a lot better yesterday, a whole lot better.
And like, listen to that into your explanation, what you just said, like a 3rd round pick for a cornerback that you stick on their number one wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
That seems like a pretty good trade for me.
I mean, it's all right.
You know what I mean?
Pretty, it's all right.
Pretty good trade for me.
Pretty good.
So, hey, shout out Washington again this week. We're going to keep talking about it. Maybe, hey, maybe what? Maybe a little Jaden Daniels on the thumbnail this week. What are we thinking? Little Washington on the thumbnail? Hey,
I'm not
maybe we'll surprise the fans. Texans.
Mm-hmm.
Texans. A lot of injuries. Okay,
yes.
We're going to start there.
Yeah.
Ton of injuries. I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it. I benched him in fantasy, and it was a good move. He only got me 13 points. CJ Stroud is struggling this season. Now, his number 1 and number 2 wide receiver, legitimately, number 1 and number 2, are hurt. Dalton Schultz has fallen off of a cliff. I can't find him. He was on my fantasy team. Still don't know where he is. Looking for him. Can't find him anywhere. But what's going on with this Texans team? Because first of all, I was shocked that they were favored so much last week, or that they weren't favored at all last week. And then we saw why. I mean, the Texans did not play well last week and have not played well in a little while. So what do you got on this Texans team? Because right now, there's a lot of AFC teams that play very well one week and another week they don't. Can think of a lot off the top of my head. You know what I mean? So what do you got with this Texans team?
Yeah, a lot of teams that play very well one week, and the New York Jets is one of them. The team that they went in and they played on that Thursday night game. So it's like a tale of two worlds when you look at those two. So I don't know, Houston lineup, like, their defense is still pretty dang good, but it's just like you said, CJ is just not. He isn't playing like poorly, but it's just, he's just getting pressured a lot, and he's just not making. Maybe you guys aren't getting open, but I'm not sure why it's not kind of working out, because obviously he's got the talent and he's got the arm, and they've got a lot of skill players still left, on that roster, like John Mechie, he's like. He's still there, and they still got Tank Dell. Like, they're not like number ones by any stretch of the means, but I think they're still good guys that you can get the ball to. Now, when they can't get open, I think that's the problem. I think that it's starting to become more of a receiver problem rather than anything else. But I don't know.
Well,
continue.
To hit on your point really quickly, like you said, you think it's more of a receiver problem, and to hit that point home, I mean, think of how good Joe Mixon has been.
I know.
I mean, that running game has been elite this season. Elite. I didn't think Joe Mixon had that much left in the bag, but good Lord. So I have to agree with you there with the wide receiver problem, because it's not like the running game isn't working. And if the running game wasn't working, this offense would be even worse. But Joe Mixon's carrying them right now,
It's like, yeah, they're making it down the field, but they just find themselves in situations that it's just like 3rd and longs and stuff like that. And just unfortunate plays, penalties, all that kind of stuff. And maybe that's the new guys in there. Maybe you can attribute it to that, but I don't know. It's next man up, and I still think they have a lot of talent on offense, probably more than Dallas has. Still. So you look at it like exactly like you said. Joe Mixon looks like he's found a new spark, like a new gear in his engine. And I didn't know he did it. I was talking one of my buddies, and he was like, he's a Bengals guy, and he's just like, he didn't look like that in Cincinnati. He's like, that's not like Joe Mixon, the one that like he looks so much slower, he looks so much different, and I think it's just the Texans know how to utilize him a little bit more, and I wish they would utilize him a little bit more, especially out of the backfield, especially out of the flat and stuff like that, and just get him involved in the passing game, just get some pressure off CJ, and because he is still a second-year quarterback, and yet he's not playing as well as he did his rookie season, and he's going through a little bit of a slump. But that's a guy that can absolutely turn it on if he gets some consistency, in that passing game.
Not to mention the division, right? That division is I mean, Jacksonville's 2-7. Indianapolis, they're starting with Joe Flacco the rest of the season. The Texans are still in first place in that division.
It's true.
With the falling off that they've kind of done. But
I think
I mean, like
Indy's the only one that can take him out. I think really. But I don't know. I want they have.
I'm not betting on Indy.
I'm not either. But I think they Joe Flacco just randomly goes off for 350 and 3 tutties. So like he can just do that. And if he happens to do that against Houston, whatever. I guess they probably don't play the rest of the year, right? But because I think they played week 1. But regardless, they'll still have divisional matchups, and that divisional record will matter. But I don't know. I just like you said, I want Dalton Schultz to get involved. He's a good tight end. Joe Mixon's good. Like they have so much talent, they're just not using it.
They're not utilizing a ton of the talent, which is why they're struggling. And once again, number 1 wide receiver and number 2 wide receiver. I mean, the guy you trade for in the offseason to come and take you to the promised land, and unfortunately he gets injured, and then his other wide receiver got injured, and not to mention the other injuries that they're dealing with as well. Ravens continue to roll. Lamar MVP level right now. I mean, this guy is right. I mean, his pace that he's going on right now is not only going to be the best in his career, but they're going to, shatter his MVP numbers. So Lamar Jackson for MVP in my book. I mean, what have you seen from Lamar Jackson other than just sheer dominance with Derrick Henry in the backfield?
I don't know if I talked about it on this podcast, but you look at Lamar this season, and he looks like a completely different quarterback. You look at him, and you see a guy who's he's not, like they're not like calling plays specifically for him to run, like QB power and kind of stuff like that. Like he's sitting back in the pocket. He's, going through his reads. If nothing's open, he's going, and obviously like they have some design run for him because he's just so talented in space. But you have Derrick Henry there. Zay Flowers is emerging as one of the best receivers, in the NFL. He's so shifty. And now that they have, these new other guys in there, so it's impressive. And I think they're just going to continue to get better and better. And that being said, with the trade deadline, they went and got, I believe, Tre'Davious White, if I'm not mistaken. So they went and got
correct
in his prime, I'll say a shutdown corner. I'm not sure where he stands at this point, especially if LA was, I think he came from LA, was willing to sell him, especially in a team that is contending right now. So I'm not sure, but it's going to be a huge boost in that secondary that's really, really struggled this season against like the pass and stuff like that. So I think they're just continuing to get better. And Lamar, like you said, he looks fantastic. He looks like, Michael Vick on steroids right now, and that's saying something. So I'm really impressed with what he did this season. I think this is the biggest jump that he's had in his career, in my opinion. Just being able to kind of solidify and mostly be like a complete quarterback in almost every facet of the game. Like there's not a part of his game that is a weakness, I would say. I think almost everywhere he sits is like a strength and is at least top 3, top 2, So I think there's not like really a big con to what he's doing right now. So yeah, absolutely. I think he's going to get his 3rd MVP and absolutely shatter that box.
And the Bills continue to roll as well. It was a close game. I think it was 30-27, but they're still continuing to roll. The AFC is looking good. And then another team in the AFC that you don't want to get going. Cincinnati got going a little bit. And Joe Burrow, thanks for the fantasy win this week. Shout out to your friend who I played. Sorry about that. 0.19. That hurt. That one stung a little bit.
That's tough.
8-1. I don't know how many wins the Bengals are going to have to string together in a row to make it to the playoffs because the AFC right now is going crazy, but the wild card spot's a little different story. Mm-hmm. So that's definitely open for the taking. And it's just a team that if they rattle off 5 wins toward the end of the season, and it's getting It's we're getting close to the halfway point here, if not already past it for some teams in terms of games played.
Mm-hmm.
So if they go off and win 5 in a row and a couple AFC teams fall a couple weeks, I mean, they're right there. So this is a team that you don't want to get going. But Joe, man, he looked so good. He looked so good. And it wasn't all to Jamar Chase. He was throwing it around everywhere. I mean, this was vintage Joe. You know what I mean? And Joe, unfortunately, has struggled with injuries and unfortunately struggled with getting absolutely demolished behind his offensive line. And they've got him a little bit of help as his career has gone on and gotten him a little bit more protection each year, it seems like. But, I mean, obviously I was watching the game, tuning into it because I'm a couch warrior on Sundays, and he's my fantasy quarterback. But if they keep doing this, they've got some very tough games coming up. They got some very, very tough games, specifically one on Thursday night this week that we're going to talk about next segment. But aside from this Thursday night game, maybe, this team could be back. What do you think?
I think they're closer to being back than they are closer to not being back. Right? You saw it at the beginning of the season. I don't know what their record was, but it was not good, and they were well below 500. Right? So they had to go on a run. And Joe Burrow is probably one of the best people to put under pressure in this league. So honestly, if it were to happen to anyone, the fact that it happened to Joe Burrow, I guess, is the best case, or like not. There's a silver lining there. But I don't know. I think a lot of that, the success obviously is to Joe Burrow, but I think you got to credit to their running game. Like we said earlier, they lost Joe Mixon. That's been their cornerstone running back for the past however many years before Joe was even there. So I think Chase Brown has stepped in and he's played really well. And not to mention, they went out and got Khalil Herbert from the Chicago Bears, which I really like that move. I think it's going to be a great compliment to Chase Brown, who's kind of that smaller guy. He can be a physical at times, but he's definitely not the kind of beast that Herbert brings, right? Because you remember back when Chicago had DeAndre Swift for the first time, right? Back I think when Justin Fields was over there, him and Khalil Herbert were just a 1-2 punch. So it was hard to take Herbert down in the goal line, and it was hard to stop DeAndre Swift in space. And I think that's kind of the dynamic that they're trying to bring over to Cincinnati with the loss of Joe Mixon in free agency. And I think Chase Brown has played very well. But Khalil Herbert, I think, adds just a different kind of game, to the Cincinnati Bengals as a whole. So I like it a lot. I think that trade isn't getting talked about enough from a team who really doesn't trade mid-season before the trade deadline. So I like it a lot. I think they got better over this past week, and Joe looks like he's back. Like, he looks like he's fully back, and although none of those touchdowns were to Jamar Chase, which is kind of sad, he's slinging that thing around. It doesn't really matter who it's to. And Mike Gesicki's playing well, and the other guys, T. Higgins, obviously, and their other guys are just playing well. They just need their defense to play. Like, they got Hendrickson. He somehow gets like a sack or two a game, but the rest of the defense is just toast like the entire time. I want to see more from Hubbard. I've been saying it for weeks. And when you're sitting on the other side from Hendrickson, you got to show up. You got to produce. So I want some more of that. I want their secondary to play better. I just want the whole defense to get stops when it matters, because you're playing Baltimore on Thursday night. You're gonna have to get a couple stops. It's not gonna be like the game at the earlier in the season, right? Like 40 to whatever.
Yeah, you never know. It might have to be with Baltimore because I don't think anybody on that defense is going to be able to stop Derrick Henry, especially right up the middle and as the game goes on. But hey, we'll see what happens. We're going to get to that in a little bit. A team that we got to talk about, the Bears, with Caleb Williams, number 1 pick, you're going to get talked about a lot. You were talking to me about that game, and they got absolutely smacked by the Cardinals. Did not look too well. Caleb's now on the waiver wire in fantasy as a result of it. Tanner's crushed. What are we thinking? What are we thinking?
You see the jersey behind me,
I almost wore it today. But I didn't do it. I got real close, but I didn't do it. I almost did it.
I think there's a lot of problems with the Chicago Bears is where I'll start. I don't think it's exclusively Caleb's fault. I think it's just the same song and dance that we've been seeing. I don't know however many years. Their offensive line, they can't block, and that's giving Caleb like no time in the pocket. He's having to run around, scramble, and try and make plays. And two, his receivers just aren't really, doing a whole lot. You saw that play with DJ Moore, who I'm not sure what the play was, but it looked like he kind of walked off. He walked off the field in the middle of the play when Caleb was scrambling in a position that probably would have gotten them a first down or at least a completion on that play. But I don't know if that goes for the entire receiving core, but
he looked to me on that play. I went back and watched it again. He looked like he was hobbling a little bit, and he kind of hobbled over to the bench and sat down. But yeah, you would like to, he has two guys on him at that point, and then all of a sudden those two guys just go, okay, and just turn around and cover the receivers, and Caleb's running for his life. So 100%.
Yeah, and I think it's, they haven't had a lot of success this season in the run game, which is, I guess, why they got rid of one of the running backs, but it doesn't look like they're giving a whole lot of help to Caleb, and the play calling has been kind of bad just overall. I think the defense has played all right in moments, but I don't know, ever since that, and I know it was just one game, but ever since that Hail Mary from Jaden Daniels, it just looked like the defense just lost all juice. I don't know how this past week of practice was, but I can't imagine it was positive, right? Especially in the secondary with 29 in there too. So he didn't start that game, and he was a rotational guy, and then I think he got bumped down to the bench too. So I think that's just a big, kind of middle finger a lot to that player specifically, and obviously that's gonna not go over well with a lot of the other players too, considering it's a culture thing and everything. But he apologized, but it just the Arizona Cardinals are a very good team, and I think they're number one, if not number two, in that division right now, which is crazy, by the way. That the whole division is super close, and Cardinals are a very good team, and they got gashed, I think, in a lot of places that I think the Chicago Bears would consider a strength, in the secondary, and definitely down on that defensive line. So not a good look for them, but I think they're going to bounce back better. They have New England, I think, this week, so that's going to be a good test for that defense. It's going to be a good test for Drake May as well, but hopefully Caleb will be able to get some confidence back in that game. But yes, I did drop him because two back-to-back subpar performances out of a bye week. It's just not what you're looking for, especially against an Arizona Cardinals defense that really has not done well against the pass. But he just didn't look. He was missing throws. He wasn't looking like very locked in, and I don't know. His receivers really weren't helping him a whole ton. So I just think you got to give him a little bit of help. I don't think Caleb should be the only one to shoulder this blame. I think he still has a ton of talent. He just needs to develop a little bit more, and they just need to get an offensive line in there. Really, they just need to block and get him some time, and so he can take the shots that he needs to without running for his life, because he can't make all the reads. He's not Patrick Mahomes out there. He's not Josh Allen, who's going to just run around the pocket and look down the field, right? So I just want a little bit better blocking on that, but overall, Chicago Bears still. I think there's still a lot of hope on the season. They've got good wins. They're a good football team, but they just need to get a couple more pieces, and I think they'll be there.
And a team that has had some guys come off of injury, and then strung a couple wins together. The Rams, they're not looking too bad. And Puka got ejected. They still ended up winning that game. But Rams are a team in the NFC. You're going to need at least 9, most likely. I mean, honestly, probably at least 10 wins in the NFC to make the wild card spot. So the Rams are a team that could easily do that to me, especially with the fact of the wins that they've had and the games that they've been in that they've lost have been pretty close up until points. So the Rams, I watched that game this past weekend. Was not a bad one at all. They, like I said, they pulled it out there in the end and kept it going. But this is a team that could potentially make a push, and you're a big fan of that run game of theirs.
I love that run game. I think McVay, although they did kind of get away from it this week, I think that with Cooper Kupp back, with Nakua back, you have to stretch the field, and you have to allow yourself to, put yourself in a position to be able to stretch the field. They've always been, fantastic in their play calling and their ability to move the ball down the field. And I think, Kyron, with kind of his dual threat kind of ability out of the passing game and just running through the tackles, I think he plays fantastically down in those trenches and outside of them. So I think they'll be just fine. But like I said, with the addition with Puka and Cooper, it's gonna get fun because those guys are just so talented. And you saw what Puka did, like immediately when he came in this past week, he was an impact immediately. And what do you do? Well, am I supposed to double cover Puka or Cooper Cup? You know the guy who won the Triple Crown a couple seasons ago, or the guy who's probably gonna win a Triple Crown in his career. It's like where do you put your attention to? Or again, out of the backfield, they have studs everywhere. So I think that defense, in general as well, is pretty unsung. It's a lot of young guys. It's a lot of unsung heroes, but they're playing super well, and they made Geno Smith hurt this past week. And Geno Smith looked like Brett Favre going out there and just ripping picks. He was slinging it all the time, all game long. And it was impressive because I don't think I've ever seen that out of Geno. But he was just ripping that thing. And that defense got turnovers, and I think that's what put him in the ability to win that game. Obviously, that game-winning drive from Stafford. Don't let him have. Don't even give him an inch. He's going to go out there and take a mile. So Stafford's still here. He looks great, and that offense is humming. It really is just Puka and Cooper Cup. Really, like that. Those two guys being in there just changes so much for that offense. It just gives, I think, Stafford a whole lot more time and just a whole lot more options in what they're able to do offensively. Because those guys can play anywhere on the field. Really, obviously Cooper's kind of a smaller, faster guy, but I think he can stretch the field. You've seen him do it countless times, and he can take the top off of defense. And Puka, you can line him up pretty much anywhere. So not to mention too, I think Demarcus Robinson, their other guy, who's been fantastic as a number 3, and even when he's been put in the number 2 or number 1 roles, he's played really well. So they've got a sneaky good receiving core. Well, I wouldn't say sneaky good. It's very obviously good. But I'd say that the depth in their receiving core is very apparent. And I think the depth in their team is very apparent. I'll say that's the sneaky part about their team. They just have a lot of depth in a lot of places you really wouldn't expect, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and definitely some in the receiver core. So I like it a lot. This team is going to be competing 100% for that division down the line, and it's going to be fun. And don't give Stafford a chance. He's going to take it every single time.
Chiefs remain undefeated, yet not number 1 in the power rankings that just came out. The Lions are. How do you feel about that one?
Honestly, I think I was talking to Hunter, my roommate, earlier when they were playing that game against when they were playing against Tampa Bay. That's the best Chiefs team I've saw this season. I thought that they played their best game of the season this past week, and they looked like the Chiefs of old, I think, a little bit. Getting Kelsey involved often and early. DeAndre Hopkins just whenever they needed a big play, he was there. Doesn't matter if it was triple covered. He's going to go up. He's got the hands of he's got glue on those things. Like it's very impressive. He would get a suspension in the NBA if he played there because everything sticks to his hands, man. It's impressive. I just can't. You look at that play when Mahomes threw it up into triple coverage and D-Hop just somehow comes down with it. These guys that are like all bigger than him, and he's just, boom, mine. That's what you saw back when he was playing in Arizona with Kyler Murray, and I loved his celebration too, an ode to the Titans. But he was immediate impact. I think Kareem Hunt has played fantastically since he's been there. He's still got a ton of juice left in his tank, and I think Pacheco is projected to come back too later on this season. So they're just going to get guys back, and they're going to get better. The only thing I really would have wanted them to see and wanted to see from them in the trade deadline is maybe go out and get like a corner or two, because I think that with Snead leaving in the offseason, like I think that's probably one of their biggest holes. But their defense is still playing really well. I think Spags always puts them in a position to succeed. He's just a fantastic coordinator in that realm. So I like this team a lot, man. I think they're going to get better and better and better throughout the season, and they're probably going to get that number one seed and get the overall bye. And that's, you don't want to give Patrick Mahomes time to study. I don't know if he was like injured or whatever, but he's a tough son of a bitch, man. He just went out there. He kept playing even under that injury, and he's fantastic, So I like the Chiefs a lot. Obviously, they're undefeated for a reason, but that was a good test against Tampa Bay. Baker looked very good without his number 1 and number 2 receiver, pretty much out for an extended period of time with Godwin this season, and then Evans hopefully coming back in a couple weeks. But Baker played well and gave him a chance to win. deservedly. So I think Chiefs, that's probably the closest they've been to losing this season, considering they went to overtime. So they are beatable unless they get the kickoff, unless they get to receive in overtime. So
And Baker knew it. Baker
knew
knew it immediately. You saw his reaction. He went like that. I saw it on TV. I was watching. I was like, no way. I was like, Baker just, yeah. I didn't have the sound up too loud, and I saw it, and I was like, yeah, that means that the Chiefs just won this puppy.
It was so sad. He picked tails. Baker picked tails.
Never fails.
It never fails, and it failed. It was a really sad moment, and football gods did not decree it to happen. So that's kind of I'm chalking it up. The football gods. I mean, we know they favor the Chiefs, so that's pretty obvious at this point. But the football gods struck again on the coin toss.
Could be triple. Could be going 3 in a row here. That'd be first time for everything with the old Chiefs.
What, they're like 8-0. I mean, yeah,
they're the only undefeated team, yet they're not number 1 in the power rankings. I get it. I get it. If the Vikings were still undefeated, you would technically have to put them above Detroit. And I know you're not going to do it, but then technically they would have had to beat Detroit because they played them. But anyway, here's the thing.
Don't like it.
They're undefeated. They don't have a loss. You can't just not put them there. And also, you're going against Mahomes. Like, haven't you learned? Has anybody learned to not go against Mahomes? I fell victim to it. You know what I also fell victim to? Going against Tom Brady a couple times. Now, given the dude won so many, I didn't think there was any way. And to be fair, a couple of them, it was real dicey there. It was real close.
Yeah, he should have 6 Super Bowls, but that's neither here nor there.
Still, that is the GOAT for a reason. But jumping to the NFL matchup section, we got the predictions this week. We got Thursday night. We alluded to it earlier. The Ravens versus the Bengals. Easily the best game of the week, in my opinion, and it's on Thursday night. So great job. Hats off, Thursday Night Football. You did it once this season, and you're probably not going to do it again because the matchups have just been absolutely horrendous. Have been horrendous. But since it's Thursday Night Football, Kirk Herbstreit's there with Al Michaels. Those are great announcers. You got to give shouts out to Ben. Give shout out to Ben, Kirk's dog. He's going through it. Shout out to Ben. Big dog guy myself. Got my pup right next to me right now of 10 years. He's getting real close. Shout out, Ben. We're thinking about you. Thursday night, like I said, Ravens, Bengals. I don't want to bet against Joey. I don't want to, especially with the Slim Shady haircut. It's right in the heart. I grew up with. I mean, I had I think I had the poster that everyone had of Slim Shady, the one and only. But I can't pick against Lamar in the Ravens.
You can't, right?
How do you pick against him and Derrick Henry? You just can't. And you have to give me a defense that's number 1 in the NFL, and that's not the Bengals. So I'm going the Ravens here. The only team I'm picking against the Ravens is the Chiefs. That's it. So Ravens, give me the Ravens here. But you said earlier that it's not going to be a high-scoring game, or it can't be. I think that this game has the potential to be a high-scoring game, and if it does, that gives Cincy a chance to win. But if it doesn't, Cincy's out of this game, and it's going to be a blowout, in my opinion, because unless Baltimore's offense stalls, you've seen it, but Lamar playing at this level, I don't think it's going to. He's number 1 in the league. I can't pick against this Ravens team. So who do you got? I mean, it's insane. This is insane.
I got Baltimore. I think it's just, you can't, like you said, you can't pick against them right now. They're absolutely rolling, and with what the defense from the Bengals, it's just horrific. It's so bad, and I can't pick against the multiple options that they have with Lamar. Now, granted, if there's a team that could beat the Ravens right now, I think it could be the Bengals, just because they do play in the same division. They know each other pretty well, and Joe Burrow does know this Baltimore Ravens team. He's had success in areas. He's had bad performances in other areas, but I think the Bengals offensively are starting to hit their stride. So if there was a game that could be high scoring on Thursday night, it would totally be this one. But I don't know. The fact that they had done it already this season just kind of makes me think that the Ravens are going to know what to expect a little bit here from the Chiefs, or from the Bengals, excuse me. But I got to go Baltimore, and I got to go Baltimore by a couple scores. I just don't know that that Joe Burrow is going to get it done with the tools that he has. I think he's going to play well. I think he's going to put up multiple touchdowns, but Baltimore's probably going to go for 40 again, That's just what you can't stop them. It doesn't really matter if you got tape on him because Derrick Henry's just like that. He's going to get at least 3 or 4 every single run that he gets, unless you're loading the box. And guess what? They got a burner out there in Zay Flowers, and they just went and got a couple other receivers that are also burners, so their receiving core somehow almost overnight just did a 180, and now they're amazing again. So I like this Ravens team a lot. Like I said, I think this is the best Lamar has ever played in his career, and I don't think it's going to stop here on Thursday night against the Bengals, a team that he does know very well alongside Joe. So it's not going to be pretty, I don't think, for the Bengals. Could be totally wrong, like I was about the Jets and Texans game. I kind of overestimated that, but I don't know if you're overestimating Baltimore in pretty much any conversation you put them in. I think they're a top 3 team, if not top 2 in the league. So yeah, give me Baltimore, and I don't know if it's going to be close. Joey's going to have to put on a absolutely magnificent performance. Like, it's going to have to be 5 touchdowns. It's going to have to be somewhere up there if they want to win this game, because I just don't see their defense getting it done. I really don't. Lamar would have to play his worst game of the season. So I think a whole lot of things got to go right for the Bengals, and Baltimore just got to roll up. They just got to pull up and be like, all right, just they play their game, and they're probably going to win. So maybe not by a couple scores, maybe by a score. I'll put it down to that. But yeah, I got Baltimore.
Yep, me as well on this one. Sorry if you're listening. I'm cheesing a little bit over here. I got the pup in here, and he's getting a little rambunctious. So gonna have to wrap this thing up pretty quick, or we're gonna start hearing some howling and some yelling. He's ready to go in the backyard and have himself a day. Sunday morning, we got the Giants and the Panthers. Going from the best matchup to the worst matchup. Give me the Giants in this one. I got my faith in old Danny Dimes. What are you thinking? You got Bryce in this one? You got old Bryce coming out there and just putting it on?
Heck no. I got the Giants. I think Danny Dimes is going to be a hero in Munich over there. They're going to treat him as one of their own. I don't know. I think it as any game for the Giants to win, it's got to be against the Panthers, right? I mean, the Panthers beat the Saints this past week, and they fired their head coach because of it. So I don't know if that's a statement, but a lot of players came out and they're like, we just lost to the worst team in the league. What does that mean?
Not to mention Cameron Jordan tweeting too. So
yeah, and it's just that the Saints aside, their organization is also a dumpster fire right now. But I mean, the Panthers got a win, which is pretty hype. I don't know if it continues though. I think Bryce, he's gonna have to put up a good performance, because I think the Giants defense is actually pretty dang good, so especially that defensive line. And I mean, they got that star over there in Malik Neighbors. He's going to go off. And I don't know when the last time he got a touchdown or had a big game was, but I don't know. I feel the rumblings. I feel Malik Neighbors is going to go off. And I just, I can't pick against the Giants right now. I think the Giants all season have played well in games that, they're supposed to win, which is not a lot of them, but I think that they've played well in games that, against lesser opponents, I'll say like that. I just I remember the Cleveland game that they played really well in. Hell, even they went toe to toe with Washington when they played them as well. So they've had some bad losses, but they've also had some pretty good losses and some pretty good wins. Even the slight amount that they had been. But Danny Dimes, he's a multiple year starter, and I don't know if this Carolina defense is going to be something that he hasn't seen before. I'll say it like that, but. I got the Giants, man. Over there in Munich, becoming the Giants of Munich.
There we go. Nice. We've got 49ers and Bucks after that. I mean, that's one that I wanted to highlight because of this right here. CMC. We wait till Wednesdays to record so we can bring you all the sports news, right? CMC is supposed to be back this week. Now, I have him in my starting lineup. He's projected 17, yet he's still on the injured reserve on Yahoo. Guys, you got to come on. Let's go. You know what I mean? Come on. But at the same time, he was activated from his practice window, so he technically could still be. But there's speculation that this man could play this week. And if he plays this week, this 49ers team gets real interesting. But another guy that's, also day-to-day is Deebo Samuel. So we don't know if Deebo's playing. We don't know if CMC's playing. But if they do, I know Tampa's coming off of a game where they almost beat the Chiefs, but you kind of saw it. They just didn't have enough firepower. And if the firepower comes back for the 49ers, I'm going to have to take them. But if they don't, and if both of those guys are injured, or if not either one of them is playing, they got to have both for me. because I'm going to go Bucks unless the 49ers have both of them. I'm going to go shake and bake because I don't think he's going to get back-to-back losses here. I think he's just going to go off. You know what I mean? He's leading the league in touchdown passes, which is absolutely absurd at this point.
Yeah.
Shout out Baker. You know what I mean? Shout out Austin, Texas, for that matter. Come on.
Heck yeah, I think Baker's had probably one of the better seasons he's had over his career, just in general. If he had Chris Godwin's and Mike Evans there, I think he'd still be doing it, and it kind of looks like he already is, just going to Cade Otton instead of Godwin, So I like what they're doing in Tampa, but I don't know. I just if CMC does come back, like I think he'll be on a snap or a snap count, or he'll have a limited time in the game, because I don't know if you want to rush back, Christian McCaffrey with the injury history that he has had. But obviously you got some good guys behind him too. So I think that you're not going to get the most of McCaffrey that we saw, like, for example, last year, where he was basically the entire running back room just in one human. So I'm going to go the Niners here. I think that them coming off of a bye week where they're able to prepare for this Bucs team, and especially what they saw them do against the Chiefs, I just can't pick against the Niners. I think they're too well coached, and I think that defense is getting better and better every single week. So Baker without his number one and number two receiver against the Niners defense that's playing better, and Brock Purdy, who's played some pretty good football up to this point in the season, coming off a bye, I got to pick Niners. I think they're just too good of a team, too good of a roster to lose this game. So I think it's a must-win too. And it's not a must-win, but it's a win that you really would want to have in a division that's apparently pretty competitive. So I think they're aware of that, and I don't think they want to lose this division, especially since the wild card's going to be loaded with teams in the NFC. So I think they want to get win that division and see what they can do with it. So yeah, I got the Niners.
We got another Sunday matchup with the Eagles versus the Cowboys. We always pick. There went the notes. Fell there. Sorry about that. The Eagles versus Cowboys, like I said, it hurts to pick against the Cowboys, especially when it's the Eagles, but I'm going to be realistic here. Your starting quarterback's not there. We don't know if CD's going. All the other injuries that we talked about at the first part of this show, I think the Eagles are going to beat the Cowboys, and I think that Saquon's going to have pretty close to 200 yards. I'm not going to lie. I don't think that you're going to be able to stop this guy. Don't think you're going to be able to contain him. Just like I don't think the Ravens are going to, or the Bengals are going to be able to contain Derrick Henry. This is a division matchup. Dallas is very used to Saquon Barkley. Played for the Giants before, torched him every time pretty much he played him, and I think he's going to torch him again. Now, there were some times where Dallas had some success against Saquon, but that wasn't with this roster that the Philadelphia Eagles have. A.J. Brown's questionable going into the game. We'll see what happens, but the Eagles right now are too good in my opinion. So I'm gonna take them over the Cowboys this week. And unless something drastic changes on the Dallas side, there's going to be a whole lot of picking against Dallas the rest of this season. But who do you got this week? Think old Cooper Rush is gonna take them out?
No, I think Philly's gonna have a field day because Saquon is playing the best football that he's ever played in his career. And I didn't even know it was possible, considering what I saw from him in the past. So, I saw him jump over backwards over a guy this past week, and it pretty much solidified. It's like, yeah, I think he's still pretty good. I think Saquon's still that guy. So I think he's going to go absolutely crazy against Dallas. And we won't, even if A.J. Brown doesn't play, like, you still got Devontae Smith back there. Who's going to cover him? Nobody.
Cover Goddard.
Who's going to cover anyone on that Philadelphia offense? So I think, at least the past couple of years, Dallas has played well against Philly, but that was the Dan Quinn defense. That was, a different team. And when Trayvon Diggs had, some pretty good performances against Dallas, but I don't even know if CD's going to be playing. Dak's not going to be playing. They still don't have a running game. They're not going to be able to produce offensively. So, I mean, Cooper Rush, maybe he knows Philly a little bit, but it's just not going to be. I don't see them getting more than 20 points in this game, and I think you really need more than 20 points to beat the Philadelphia Eagles right now. So I got Philly by over a touchdown, really.
Yeah, definitely take the over in this one. Then we've got Sunday night. We've got the Lions versus the Texans. Texans are starting to get to that point. I mean, like I said, they're still in that division, or they're still leading that division at this point in the season, but they're getting very, very close. The Colts are creeping up right there with them. So I do think that the Texans are going to take that division down, but you're playing the Lions, and the Lions right now are absolutely rolling. I don't think with the injuries what the Texans have that they're going to come back magically on Sunday night against the Lions. I do think they're going to have a better performance because I do think CJ shines in the lights. So I'm going to go Lions on this one. Texans, though, I think we'll make it a little bit closer in the beginning, but I do think it's going to be what happens and what's been happening this whole season with the Lions. They go in halftime, they make adjustments, and sometimes they put up a 50 burger. This Texans defense, I don't know if it's going to be a 50 burger, but I'd be pretty shocked if the Lions didn't get 30 points, to be honest, because this offense looks so good and this defense is playing so well at this point.
Yeah, I think you took the words right out of my mouth. I think Detroit wins. They get 30. And I don't know if the Texans can stop that run game. I don't know if anyone can stop that two-headed monster with Sonic and Knuckles over there in Detroit. And the offense is just rolling right now. I mean, we got the
It's
highest
very cool.
completion percentage in the NFL with Jared Goff, and he's not even throwing for 100 yards a game, and he's still having a hell of a game. So it's gonna be really really tough. I don't know what's going on with Jameson Williams, but isn't his suspension up this week? Is he allowed to play again?
He's
So
supposed to. Right now he's projected to get points this week on Yahoo Fantasy. So yeah, I mean
okay.
it's up. He had a 2 game. It's up. But you know how he is. He either literally does nothing or goes off.
No,
That's it.
but
There's no in between.
that gives that defense just one more thing to worry about.
True.
So give me the Lions even more now. So I got the Lions. I think it'll be close though. I don't think CJ's going to have another just really bad performance because it's just. I believe in CJ Stroud. I think he's played very well in his time in the NFL, and I do hope that they start getting that run game established. But we'll see what old Zadarius Smith can do over there in Detroit too, because they went out and got him at the trade deadline, and I really like him. He's a fantastic player. I think that he's succeeded pretty much everywhere he's been. Obviously, he's been in Cleveland the past couple of years, and I got to watch him play. So I think he was an excellent complement to Myles Garrett, and now he's going to have a chance to pretty much shine on that offensive or defensive line now that Aiden Hutchinson is pretty much out for the year. So I think he's gonna have an immediate impact. Maybe we'll see if he gets a sack, but you can pretty much just throw a pass rusher in there on a short week and it's like, oh hey, here you go. It's like, did anything change? Not really, but we'll figure it out. So I think Zadarius will be just fine, and I think they got better, and they're going to continue to get better throughout the season. But Lions are a wagon. The offense is offensing right now, so I like it. I like what I'm seeing.
Solid. Last matchup, Monday night, Dolphins at Rams. Who you got on that one?
Give me the Rams. I think the Rams are just a kind of like a wagon right now. It's going to be hard. I don't see a whole lot from their secondary nowadays with the Miami Dolphins. They kind of look like their second, like they used to have like, Xavier Howard, like prime Jalen Ramsey. They had like Holland back there. He played really well when he was a younger player too. So like, they just don't. It doesn't look like that anymore. They got rid of a lot of their players in that defense and free agency this past year, especially at like the second level with the linebackers and on the defensive line as well with Christian Wilkins. So like, there's just not a whole lot on that defense that's telling me that they're going to be able to stop the Rams' run game or their receivers in any capacity. So yeah, I got the Rams, but it's going to be close. I think this is going to be a closer game than maybe people realize. I don't know. These are two good teams, and Tua's back. I think he'll play well. Hopefully Tyreek gets a touchdown. That'd be kind of fun. But it's going to be an offensive game for sure. I think it's going to be. Hopefully we get a higher scoring game. That would be fun. But both defenses leave a little bit to be desired. Probably more on the Miami side of things. But I think the Rams are. Moving right now, and I don't know if Stafford's going to buckle under the big lights on Monday night.
I'm gonna go other side. I'm gonna go Dolphins here. Is it because I moved to Florida? Yeah, that's why I'm going Dolphins strictly because I live in the state now. So let's go Dolphins. Let's go to it. Tyreek, not one touchdowns. Give me two. You know what I mean? Give me two tutties to old
That.
Tyreek. And the big one is, hey Chan, I need a big week this week.
He's
Just
been
like
fantastic.
always.
He's been so.
I appreciate the fantasy performances as always. Shout out A&M. Moving on to the last segment. College football, and unfortunately we had a colossal meltdown with the Aggies. Really all they had to do was win a couple more games and then play, take down Auburn on the road. Even if they did lose to UT at the end of the year, you had a pretty good shot to make the college football playoff if you're going in there with 2 wins. We're going to review the new rankings here in a second, but Texas A&M recap, unfortunately, like I said, epic meltdown. and it's just not. It was not. It didn't look good. Marcel Reed did make the start that game, and South Carolina just came out humming from the start. That stadium was absolutely rocking. Have to go to a game there. It looks like an incredible scene, but just techno music going the whole time. South Carolina storms the field at the end of the game. The coach does an interview in the sea of people. Just legendary stuff down there, South Carolina. Unfortunately, at A&M's expense. And hey, unfortunately, being Aggies, we're kind of used to it. Especially coming into the SEC. There comes a point in the season where you just have to continue to win, and if you don't, you could fall off. But A&M is number 14 in the rankings right now. They didn't fall that much, which is kind of funny. So there still is a chance, but A&M definitely has to win it out for the rest of the year to potentially make that playoff push. I know you were doing some other things, Tanner, on the college football side, but you can speak to the fact of Aggies. They had to get that win. And unfortunately, they just didn't get it done, in the time when they needed to do it.
Yeah, I was not able to watch the game this past weekend, but I did go back and see some highlights because I was at a wedding, which was very nice from one of my best friends. Shout out Alex, but not a A&M wedding, probably a UT wedding if anything. But man, it's just that they've lost. Obviously, they lost their starting running back Moss to injury this past week, and that was a tough beat. Just not something you really want to see out of a team that was really rolling, especially on the ground. But when you got only a couple things that you really do on offense, it wasn't really too surprising. With Reed, obviously he has the ability to throw the ball, but like his main game is using his legs, right? He's very shifty and he's great in space, but if you don't allow him to have that space, and you just kind of do what LSU didn't and expect them to give the ball to Marcel Reed or the running back pretty much almost every other play, it's going to make their offense a little bit one-sided, a little bit one-dimensional, and granted, a game that the defense really didn't play well at all, which is not something that you would expect coming off a huge win against LSU. Maybe it's them getting complacent a little bit, but I don't know. It was a bad performance from the defense overall. After a week that I really thought that they played probably their best game of the season. So Texas at the end of the year is a must win at this point, and they have to pretty much win out if they want a chance of making the playoffs at this point. But and the Gamecocks, they played real well. They were gamecocking. They were cocked to the max, I guess. So I liked what they did, man. But I don't know. I've never seen a team storm the field when they beat A&M. That was a new one for me. I was like, this is, at least it's nice. There's a silver lining here, right?
It's good. It was a good little bit.
Ranked like number 10 ranked at Texas A&M, but they got a good squad. I'll say that. A&M, they've got a lot of good depth guys, and they've got a lot of good starting guys. I think that give them a couple years, and they could absolutely make a run at that thing. And well, again, with the playoffs and the way that they are, all you got to do is basically make the top 12, and if you win your conference championship, even better. So you got to get up there, and I thought that they played an okay game, but again, it's just it kind of happens almost every year, if not every other year, that they lose a game that they really should win. So it's the SEC though. All the teams are pretty dang good, and that's what they do, man. We've seen it week in and week out. Alabama, they get torched by Vanderbilt, like a team that you're like, okay, I guess this is happening now. Tennessee is a powerhouse program now apparently too. So SEC football, it's just like this. Any week, any SEC team can really lose, I believe. So, I mean, we saw, Kentucky and Georgia going at it, a team that has won multiple national championships, and it was a low-scoring game, just a really bad, nasty game, too. So, it's just, that's how it's like. That's how they play football over here in the South. But A&M got the butt end of it this time, which is not too surprising. But I think they still got a really good team. I think they got a lot to build on, especially towards the end of the year. Hopefully they'll make a good bowl. But they got to beat Texas. That is a must win now at this point.
Is a must win. And speaking of more SEC matchups, we got some good ones this weekend. We got Georgia versus Ole Miss.
There you go.
And then Alabama versus LSU, and Alabama versus LSU. Those games, you're playing for your college football playoff life right there at that point between Alabama and LSU.
Yeah, I was going to ask, is that a must win for either team?
It has to be, because it's two lost teams. You're not going to make the playoff with three losses, I don't think. So yeah, I definitely think that's must win. And if Alabama or LSU wins by a good majority, then it could boost them up in the rankings there a little bit. But speaking of the rankings, we have the new rankings. We skipped them last week. We're going to do them this week. We'll go up to 25. We're going to go 5 at a time here. We're going to see if Tanner disagrees or agrees, and then we're gonna end this thing because we don't have any more baseball to talk about, like Tanner said. And he already got me riled up with hockey. He keeps freaking doing it with my Sharks. That's because he's a Dallas fan. You guys got a real good team, all right? You got a real good team. We'll talk about him more in the playoffs because you're not going to miss the freaking playoffs.
No.
Number 1 through number 5. Here we go. We've got the University of Oregon, sickest jerseys in the league, not even close. Then we have Ohio State University, even with a loss, sitting there. We got close. The mic almost went off the rails. Right. University of Georgia at number 3. University of Miami at number 4. Moved to the state, a little bump there. Good job, Chad. And then number 5 is the University of Texas. Any surprises there? There are 2 undefeated teams. Oregon is 9-0. Miami's 9-0, and Ohio State, Georgia, and Texas all have 1 loss.
I think you would probably say that Ohio State is probably the surprise a little bit, but I think that given you look at that game against Oregon that they did play, and it was a game that went down to that could have gone down to a field goal, right? It's a game that Ohio State probably could have won at the end of the game if they had a little bit better clock management, but give a lot of credit to Oregon for putting them in that situation too. So I think that's why they get the nod over Ohio State. And I think a lot of people are kind of being like, Miami is undefeated. Why are they not higher? Right. You can say
still top 4.
Yeah, of course. Right. They're going to make it and they're probably going to win their conference too. So the argument is that, they don't play a whole lot of really good teams, and the college football playoff committee are looking at that and looking at it as opposed to a couple other teams that are playing good opponents, like in the SEC, like with Ohio State in the Big Ten, right? So I think, you don't get to pick who you play. So it's not really, in my opinion, a very good argument. So I think it's all pretty much, you could interchange, maybe be, I don't know, 2 through 4, and no one would really be that mad, in my opinion. I think they're just fine. I really like the top 5. I think Texas deserves to be in there. I think they're a fantastic team still. They still, we'll see how things go down the stretch, but right now, yeah, I think it's perfectly fine. I think that all those teams are probably the best teams in the country, and you can't really debate it. So,
yeah, and you've got Penn State there at number 6. The University of Tennessee, like you said, powerhouse at number 7. Indiana University at number 8.
Hoosiers, baby.
Wow, 9-0. Okay, then BYU at number 9, and Notre Dame at number 10. Penn State only has 1 loss. Tennessee 1 loss, and then Indiana, BYU, undefeated. There's no way if they had 1 loss they would be there. That makes complete sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then Notre Dame sitting there at 7-1. Wow, that's pretty crazy. So Notre Dame has not lost since earlier in the season, and A&M got very, very close to beating the Fighting Irish, but they didn't do it. Penn State's sitting there at 6 for me. That makes sense because their only losses against Ohio State, and that was a really close game. That was a really good game last weekend. Tennessee's played extremely well. The 1 loss there, though, to me, it's interesting. But that strength of schedule, like you said, that's why they're sitting at 7 ahead of Indiana and BYU, and not sitting at number 9. And then you have Notre Dame with 1 loss as well. What do you think about that? I mean, I think that's pretty fair. I think 6-10 is also pretty fair.
I think it is. I think Indiana, you got to give them their flowers. They've been playing fantastically. Their head coach, the guy from James Madison, if I'm not mistaken, who turned that program around, is over here. He's now turning Indiana around. So I love that team, what they're doing. But they're going to have to run into an absolute Goliath with Ohio State later on down the line in the season. So we'll see if they're able to keep that spot. But if they do their job and they win the games that aren't played against Ohio State, I think they make the playoffs. Genuinely, I think they really do. So, I mean, we'll see how far they fall if they do lose to Ohio State and how bad if they do play. But, I mean, they're in a competitive conference. That's the Big Ten. I think it's, the number 1, if not number 2, depending on who you talk to in this season for college football. So I like what they've been doing. BYU, I thought that they've played, again, pretty well. I think they're over there aren't they in like the Big 12 now? So they've played pretty well. But like I said, Tennessee's a powerhouse, and Notre Dame definitely a surprise after that really bad loss earlier in the season. But they've climbed back and they've looked really good. So that defense is still very, very good and probably one of the nation's best. And I think that's kind of what they're riding on. If they can make it into playoffs too, you never know. With a good defense in a college football environment, that's scary. That is scary. So they can absolutely be able to make some moves later on down the line. But yeah, I like it a lot. This 12 team playoffs is looking already so good. I'm so excited.
It's gonna be a great time. Number 11 through 15, we've got Alabama at number 11,
Mm-hmm.
Boise State because of their running back
Mm-hmm.
Jonty, 13 SMU, 14 Texas A&M, 15 LSU. Alabama has 2 losses. Boise State, SMU only have 1 loss. A&M and LSU both have 2 losses. The fact that Alabama's sitting there at number 11, that's it. That's a little interesting to me. I think what I probably would have done is I think probably actually put Alabama at 13 and had Boise and SMU there, but at the same time, a one-loss SMU team for me,
Mm-hmm.
13 could also be rich. But the interesting part about SMU is they've played more games than everybody. They're 8-1 as opposed to everybody else that only usually has like 8 wins at this point right now in the season. Some teams don't. Some teams like have more, like Ole Miss, which is sitting there as well. But I don't know. Maybe that has a bit to do with it. But here's my first kind of with the rankings here. A little reservation with this one. A little bit reserved on this. What do you think about 11 through 15?
I like it overall. I think that Bama I think deserves to be at least in the top 12, if not really close, because they still have a lot of really good players. Like yes, it depends on what Bama team shows up, but at their peak, I think that they're a team that can make a run in the playoffs. They've done it year in and year out. Those players have done it. So it's going to be a different, it's a transition year. We talked about this pretty much every time we talk about Bama. It's going to take time, but the fact that we're sitting here and we're being like, man, this team is like not up to expectations. They're not doing what they are, and they're like ranked like 11 in the country. Like that's still pretty good. It's all things considered, like they're still having a pretty dang good season. So I think the players are still really good. It's just overshadowed by that Saban era, and it's going to be for in the years to come, a couple years to come before they start getting wins with this new culture. But I like where they are. Like you said, I think they could definitely be bumped down a couple spots because they do have 2 losses. But they were, yeah, they're still a team that can make a lot of noise in the playoffs, in my opinion. But with SMU, with Boise State, I like it a lot. I think SMU. I think they beat BYU earlier in this year too. So you got to give them some flowers on that. So that's
BYU's undefeated.
yeah. So give them. Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah.
Is that correct? Oh, but
They beat Pittsburgh is what you might be thinking of. They played.
Oh yeah, they
They've
lost.
got
No,
they
they
played.
lost. Yeah, they lost to BYU by 3. I just looked at
They
it. But
lost 8. They lost in the 18-15 to
yeah,
BYU. They were both unranked at the time, but they beat Florida State, who was unranked. They beat them. They beat Florida State 42-16.
yeah. Florida State
Oh,
sucks.
I know, but that's still a tough scene. They beat ranked Louisville, and they beat ranked Pitt, and that's the only. Those are the only ranked teams. Who have they lost to? BYU. Duh. Okay, so
Yeah,
the only loss they have is to
yeah,
BYU. Okay,
yeah.
I
That's
understand that a little bit more.
Yeah, so I was a little bit mistaken, but yeah, it's still I think it's still a good thing to put on your resume because they were so close with BYU, who is a top
Yeah.
10 team, and so I think they deserve to be up there. I don't know if I would agree as so high. I thought that Pitt win was pretty good, but again, it's not. I don't know. It's not super desirable. Again, you look at the teams they play. It's not something that they really can control. But it. We'll see. We'll see if they can finish off the season and play up to the standard that they have been so far. But Boise State, you look at that team that absolutely made noise against Oregon, who was one of the best teams in the country. I remember coming on this podcast and being like, "Does Oregon suck? Boise State? Like, what do we?" But no. The answer to that question was they're both pretty dang good. So I think Genty is, he's top 5 in Heisman voting, and he's probably going to, get closer up to the top towards the end of the season if he keeps doing what he's doing. But that team is disgusting. They give him the ball pretty much every single time, and Who cares? They got a blue field. Put them in the playoffs. So I don't know. I don't know how all the conference games works with teams that are out of like the Power Four. At this point, but I hope they make it, and I hope they get like I guess a wild card. I guess it's called like round one of the playoffs, and hopefully they can get a team that they can get start rolling, start getting a couple wins going. So I like this Boise State team a lot. They've had produced some NFL tower caliber talent in the past couple years. Every year they at least get like one or two guys in there that's like definitely a starter somewhere. So usually on the Cowboys, unfortunately, but I like Boise State, but with A&M with LSU backing it up, it's I think that's deserved. I think they sit right there. I think that makes a ton of sense. But I'm surprised A&M didn't fall farther. But LSU's got like we said, it's got a big test. We're gonna see what they're really made of because they've been in some absolute barn burners this season, and they've been on the unfortunate side of it, and they've been on the winning side of it as well too with that Ole Miss win. So I think the LSU they deserve to be in the playoffs just with the talent, the level that they've played. Nussmeier's had a great season. That wasn't against A&M, but I think that they've overall had a really good season. But we'll see if they can string a win together this week.
And speaking of Ole Miss, you just mentioned them. They're at number 16. Number 17, we got the Iowa State Cyclones. Such a sick name. Pittsburgh there at 18. Kansas State sitting there at 19. And the University of Colorado at 20. Ole Miss, Kansas State, and the University of Colorado all have 2 losses. Iowa State and Pitt just have 1 loss. That all seems pretty solid to me right there. It's funny the clump of the SEC teams from 14 to 16, and then Alabama sitting there at number 11, and not to mention Georgia and UT both being there in the top 5. So good showing from the SEC. Any comment really on that with 16 through 20? Kind of, I think the only surprise really is that Colorado comes in there at 20.
Yeah, I mean they've been a team that's kind of been up and down, these past couple years with the Dion era. But no, if they can make a run for it, I'd love to see them in the college football playoffs. That's kind of the main
tough.
thing about that. They gotta pull off some. They gotta get some pretty much win out, and then they gotta get a little bit of help. But
I don't know.
They have talent. They have so much talent, and you can't say that they would not. It wouldn't be a show. I'll say that in the college football playoffs. So I would love Dion's doing some wonderful work over there in Colorado. He's pretty much getting a whole new roster every single season. But heck, it's working out. This is a team that's been exciting and
really fun.
They're ranked 20 in the country, so hopefully they can get a couple wins, string it together, and get a little lucky. But they just got to make 12. They just got to get to 12.
And finishing out, we've got Washington State at 21, Louisville at 22, Clemson at 23. Clemson also had a bad loss this past weekend. Mizzou sitting there at 24, and undefeated Army sitting there at 25. That was a very close game that they had this past week as well.
Army, man.
21 with Washington State with 1 loss. Louisville has 3 losses, the only 3-loss team in the top 25, but that is because of their most recent game against Clemson where they upset them. You have to put them in. I might have put them maybe at, I don't know, if it was me, I think what I probably would have done here is thrown Washington State up at number 20 and then dropped Colorado down to probably 21. And then I think I would have, I mean, Clemson and Louisville's tough. But I mean, Army, sitting there undefeated, it's tough to.
Why not?
Yeah, I want them personally in there because their jerseys, their black and gold jerseys are some of the sickest in the league that aren't like Oregon. You know what I mean? But no really gripes about the top 25. Definitely think that we had some similar expectations. Thought A&M was going to fall a little bit more, but overall, kind of, doesn't make a too much splash there, but a little bit. And as they keep releasing these as the season goes on, we may not hit them every week, but we'll hit them every other week, and we'll definitely talk about it whenever they make the college football playoffs and whenever we have the final lineup of that. And we'll predict who we think's going to win because now we got a whole bracket, and it's going to be a good time. But I think that's all the sports talk we got this week. Tanner, you got anything more?
Watch the NBA. It's looking good. Cleveland Cavaliers are undefeated. Celtics look like the Celtics. Spurs are a game away from 500. I think they're playing tonight, and they could make that a thing. They could. Crazy enough. Wemby's like playing not that great of a season so far, but they're still in games. Hopefully Pop gets better. Lakers have one player, and his name is Anthony Davis. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Well, we will let you run with that one next week. See you later, folks.
Later, everyone.